something if you're sounding harsh?
No,
Or not hoarse?
no. This might be. It might sound harsh because this man is hurt. Busted my shoulder today after a medical injection.
Yikes.
Dang, that's no fun. Very
Sometimes,
important for me to get this out of the way of showing the disclaimer. So I should be actually focused on sharing the screen when I do that,
probably. Yeah.
because this is a fair use disclaimer not to make money and copyright infringements. I hate all those infringers, and I don't want to give any false medical advice or financial advice, although I think that RJ, if they don't want to listen to us about financial advice, I guess they didn't want to go from poor to rich like we can make them. And we lived our life to be. But they know everything, so we can't give advice. We have to be very careful. This is going to be absolutely
Yeah.
the
Liability will kill you.
the insane factor. I only have a couple of things. It's going to be 38 discoordinates signed by different countries. That's a screenshot. It's Pope Pius. I forgot that that it was like I had that one where it was between these years, starting with the end of World War I. They've already had their new
Nation building.
nation building with that Jekyll Island thing going for 5-6 years now. The Roman Catholics introduced the mafia mob, bringing up the Inquisition. This one, I needed to explain this because people are getting, what is it, shadow banned. And I just saw something here. One of these, the cells are important. Post-vax euthanasia. I just wanted to say, in my lifetime, I never thought I would hear that phrase. They've mentioned euthanasia since I was a youth, and they're going to start it in Sweden. It's banned. It's bad because
Canada, north of the border here.
That's where it's evolved to. Dr. Francis Schaeffer was warning young Christians like myself in the 70s that this is where it was headed. But even he never said that there would be a video someday called Post-Vax Euthanasia that I'd have to process. I'm having a hard time with it because I'm all into mitochondria and the fact that those people that told me there was a simple cell. But no, there's mitochondria in it that has energy factories that keep us young. But free women of the world, you will fight. Really, that's all I had. I skipped this one. I used this as a thumbnail the other day, and I forgot to explain it. Look at these two guys. Look at 32 views in 3 hours. Jefferson's Educational Society of Erie. Now, we could get more views if I said I was going to, expose Liz Cheney as a militant lesbian who shouldn't be a Republican, but her husband is in that cartel with that Carlyle group with the Bush oil connections that go back to them. It gets too long, but instead we got sister, so she's going to be like a religious person from a church. But yay, I've got Liz Cheney because they help each other. Come on, Liz. There's a poor girl out there trying to get our message out. 32 views. That just doesn't seem like much, RJ. Whoops. Didn't want to show that information, but at least make them work for it if they have to go back and see what I just kind of said oops about. I had to go like, oops, there it ain't. We still sharing? Circumcise your heart, therefore, and stiffen your necks no more. The God of gods, Lord of lords. We really nailed that down, didn't we? Man, that was a good one. We got hexagonal water. Some people are going to eventually wake up and realize that water should be H804, and they break it down to one cell when it actually is a water's a hexagon. But I don't want to get into that right now. That's too much later stuff. I want to talk right off the bat about, we're going to go over voting. You know, we believe the reset started in 1711. We got voting rights to go over. When did votes for women, votes for men start? Women's suffrage. You know, black men didn't even get to vote in the United States in 1964, but the only thing we get pounded down our votes are, oh, the poor women. Oh my goodness, the poor women. From all of history until 1919, when they got the vote on January 1st, 1920, and within 50 years, they've said, oh, now that we can vote, we finally made it legal to have abortions. Congratulations.
Way to get her done. Yeah.
Yeah, nice work, ladies. This sounds to me like the righteous shall live by faith. Cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree, so that in Christ Jesus, the blessing of Abraham might come through the Gentiles, so that we might receive the promised Spirit through faith. Because we got to get into this later, RJ. We're going to get into this about man-made covenants and other stuff, Lord willing. But your thoughts on this verse, since you're the man that is the guy that goes, you're the man that brings the Emmanuel to everybody's mind. He's God with us. That's what I'm saying. And that God declaring that, certainly.
That wasn't me. That was Isaiah.
God among you is. Okay, well, you know what I mean. Listen to this. He'll fall down on his face, worship God. Somebody, the saved are going to be declaring that certainly God among you is. Well, I know that we don't speak the more gooder English as some people, but God among you is that another way of saying Emmanuel? Because this is pretty much a requirement. This is what you gotta.
Well, and they read it right to left. See, when you were reading it in the text there, I think
maybe we should, yeah.
backwards, but
Let me read it in the Berean literal, though. That's a little bit more choppy for those that don't like it smooth. And the secrets of his heart become manifest, and thus, having fallen upon his face, he will worship God, declaring that God is certainly among you. That kind of fulfills a lot of prophecies in my world, RJ. Go ahead, brother.
well, yeah, I guess acknowledging what is evident, that that's a beginning for sure.
It really is. Let's go. Oops, wrong one here. So we got that. Voting rights for the women. We'll look at that more later. I'm looking at eons earlier today. I was looking at eons far above all rule and authority, power, dominion, that, and above every name that is named, not only in that aeon, that time, that happening, but also in uno, the one
yet
come.
to come.
Yeah, that age we're in, I believe.
At that time.
Could be at that time. That present age is what they said in the Berean Standard. The Berean Standard's good. The Berean Little's a little choppy, but I guess it's more literal. Huh. Duh. These guys are driving me nuts, RJ.
Horthy on June 25th, 1944, with a telegram begging for him to stop deporting the country's Jews. Days later, Horthy suspended the policy, citing the Vatican's intervention as his reason for doing so, and thus sparing 170,000 Hungarian Jews from
Wow. So the Pope really wasn't in cahoots with the Nazis and the Red Cross and the YMCA that passed out 500,000 fake passports to the Nazis so that they could hit those rat lines and end up the ones that didn't get drafted in Operation Paperclip and the things like that for the other countries. They had to just go pretend that it didn't happen somewhere else. We're going to come back to that. I'm just showing a few tabs. Okay, we got this Pope's secret back channel to Hitler. So in 2022, who would think that there's going to be new information that the Vatican was like in on it? Boy, I feel in August 1939, he was finalizing plans for the invasion of Poland. Adolf the Hitler was also engaged with negotiations with the Pope Pius XII. So delicate that not even the German ambassador knew about it. They might have been love letters for all we know. I haven't read them yet. Didn't even know they were out there. They've only been out for 2 years. 8 decades they've been maintained. They wanted to keep it secret because it says here, as everybody knows, the Roman Catholic Church pays billions because they diddle little boys and try to hide it. Wait, that's just what.
Good thing they have a budget.
Yeah, they got a budget. We'll read that later. It doesn't say that. That's what they're accused of, that they do pay the billions. I'm just trying to, you notice how they always, you cannot misspell a word, but they always want to correct you. So they're going to tell you that I'm wrong, that they were not full passports. They worked. They got 500,000 people with the International Red Cross fake papers. And it worked for a long time. And it was, by 1965, when, I was still 9 years old or something like that. Or you were 20 or 50 or something. And they were putting out movies like Combat, already glorifying World War II, and it was 20 years old. So that means the people that were captains and lieutenants, 25-year-olds, because that's the average age of those guys, they would have been 45 running businesses watching, like, oh boy, glad we stamped out all those Hitlers. No more of that anymore.
Well, yeah, like redoing, movie this or either the same storyline that at least continues the programming. For those that are paying, real money to go see it and making the supporting the movie to make it profitable. That's all part of the education system, probably.
This man, Hootle, was the first Catholic priest to dedicate himself to establishing escape routes. They claim that Hootle helped the Nazi fugitives with money and, more importantly, false identity papers that were not full passports. Somehow they might have left a period or a comma out so that they can plausibly say, well, this isn't an illegal document.
Well, wasn't that movie Gregory Peck? That wasn't it Men in Black or something? You don't recall that movie?
Well, the people are going to be
Vatican
confused because there's movies called Men in Black now that are about space aliens. The Men in Black, the Catholic priests in the shoes of the
during the
fishermen.
Nazi occupation in Rome.
So it's that easy to do Photoshop and disguise to make one person look like Hitler, is my takeaway. He did it. That's one of the guys. These guys ended up in America. We'll maybe get to it later. But you're not going to believe the stuff I wrote down. Look, it's about masturbation is like, what did I search there? Doctor's History Masturbation Wiki. Somehow, since I'm on the scholar list and can get all these things for free, It goes back to, everything goes back to the Enlightenment. Everything goes back to, you know, from 1711, when we were reset by the 1750s, the secret societies and everybody have said, we need a 1776 revolution in the United States founded by the Rosicrucians, the Washingtons, Jeffersons, the Hellfire Club, Ben Franklin, those guys, you know what I'm talking about. And then they moved it over and said, we don't need Napoleon anymore. We want those guys gone. But it was actually King Louis. After they did their Renaissance, the new birth, and discovered the Greeks, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, et al., they said, we need a republic like that. And what they got in America, because they emulated those guys, we'll emulate them too. And so Rousseau, Voltaire, they started going like, masturbation's bad. Well, their main guy, Rousseau, attributed an enormous number of physical and mental diseases to masturbation, yet their women are that were in the Renaissance with them are claimed as the leaders of the feminist movement. I find a contradiction there. So by the late 1800s, many doctors blamed masturbation on neurosis, and the Kellogg's because the Kellogg's were raised by the Seventh-day Adventist church leaders and put up, you know, with start your Kellogg foundations to tell people don't masturbate or something like that. That's all it was about. Eat this bland food, don't masturbate, and wait for the rapture and worship on Saturday. That's what the Kellogg's were all about. And then they started putting sugar in the food,
as well as other ingredients. But yeah, that was the beginning.
Yeah, I've even heard that.
Times.
So we you know, we got that. Now, RJ, I got some reading to do, and you can do the stop and drop commentary anytime. Men's right to vote in the United States was established where when every man got one vote, the whites, blacks, Native Americans, no poll tax, no nothing. That was 1964. Yet we act like poor women, well, they got to vote, but the other men and some women and other colors besides white, because we had the one drop rule in this country. So it took almost 140 years for all the black and all the men to finally get one vote per person. It took 50 years from 1920, January 1st, when women got the right to vote, for them to change things up. And now abortion was legal in 1972. 52 years. That's getting it done, women. Good job. 190 years for men to, you know, for black men to all freely vote. But you got what you wanted, what was important to some people, abortion, in 50 years. What if okay, switching up. RJ, I know you can still hear me. What if I should start to make time that I could worry about President Trump's son, Barron, you know, from that marriage to a girl who dresses like a porn star and is accused of being a transsexual by some. Supposedly they have a son named Barron, and now Barron it seems that he's 18 years old and he may be a gay person. Not that there's anything wrong with that to a lot of people. And he's already got a lover that he's living with in Las Vegas. So as soon as you turn 18 years old, you know that you could be a man trapped in a woman's body, and the president's son is living with another man pretending he's a woman, and you know they're having sex. How does that happen when you're 18 years old? You're ready to go. Take me, I'm your new wife because I'm a woman trapped in this young man's body. That's what they're putting out about Barron Trump now. I don't know if it's true or not. I wouldn't be surprised. Because from what I understand, he's just ready to lose his virginity as a male, or has he been, or when does it break down that the president doesn't know he likes Neil and Bob, not Shirley the girly? So do I have the time to worry about that kind of stuff? I don't think so. They can dress up Trump's wife and other thing, say that's what people like. And now I guess Baron Trump may be a woman trapped in a man's body. I guess at 18 years old, he was able to figure that out. And now he's allegedly living with a man called his lover, that they have gay sex. Wow. Okay, now shift a little gears here. What if after Satan's freed, and his plan is to use this established Roman Catholic Church, who's on record as having an inquisition where they would strip down women and look for signs that a demon had pinched them, looking for bruises over their nude body, and then they would torture them and confessions. And I would understand there is a percentage of women that after a while, if you pushed enough buttons, they could go that 50 Shades of Gray route that we're living with the remnants of that still from the 2012, 2013 assault on our mentalities and assault on the middle road. That's normal. We've got to understand that. People like to get the crap beat out of them, and they call it love. I think that started looking for those women to put them in power to say, although it's the Renaissance thing, so now, is it possible? Is it true that the documentation is there that from that time in the 1920s all the way through to the 1960s that every single Ivy League school took nude pictures of the freshmen? Yeah, that's what they're saying, and they've got the pictures to show it, that they took nude pictures of the freshmen. So that's possible. Is it also possible, RJ, that since the 1960, when they had the big reset and everything else, that two mafia rum-running families from Scot-Irish mafia connected, and I'm talking about the Trump, the Kennedys, and the Bushes, 4 of the last 12 presidents since 1960 have been a part of those mob families? I'm saying that's weird. That's weird. And now, powerful, rich women got others to get paid to go to work. So these rich women have set up saying, we've got to be liberated so that you can go to work and sweat your ass off. But for the rich, even at the time in the 1800s, as we'll show, they were swooning. They weren't sweating. They were going to the doctors because they were hysterically worked up over the machinations of their mind of, we've got to get the vote. We've got to be more like men. We've got to do that. And do you know what they document as the prescription for their rich women's hysteria who could afford to go to the doctor then? They would go there and get electrically masturbated, but not have sex with their husband. They would go to the doctor, be masturbated, and go, okay, good. Now I'm back, and let's get those rights for women that they can vote and that we could push the eugenics. Margaret Sanger and abortion was all about eugenics. Go, RJ. I know I've said a lot.
You'd probably want to set up your next appointment before you leave. But yeah, the Roaring 20s, as far as following logically an agenda such as what you're describing, yeah, the one country under blackmail is I mean, yeah, it might take a while to get, but how that Whitney Webb
Yeah,
can
people need to
lay
watch that.
out plenty of, and I just caught some more of that this morning, segments. There's a lot there, certainly. You know, it isn't just a single topic thing. I mean, other than the generalization of corruptness and what motivates and drives the greed and the deceptions and the trafficking and the money
Yeah.
laundering. I mean, yeah, it's all CIA, uh, you know, derived, but and
And it would,
most
yeah,
are unaware of, you know, the backstory to what's driving the madness, so to speak.
and the idea that people could be ashamed enough to be blackmailed is almost hard for people to understand, because nowadays they'd be like, haha, we've got pictures of you dressing up like a girl. They'd say, so what? Who cares? You know, but this
Yeah,
is,
that closet door's been open for some time now. Yeah, okay, yeah.
let's listen to just a bit of
I
it.
found out early in the marriage that my husband was bisexual. He was involved with Roy Cohn, the assistant counsel to Senator McCarthy. And he used to come with a little.
This is Susan Kaufman, ex-wife to renowned bootlegger and founder of Shenley Liquor Corporation, Louis
Really
Rosensteel.
see that he was a gay boy.
In this clip, Susan is describing a situation she outlined in a 1970 affidavit under oath delivered to the New York State Legislative Committee on Crime. In that affidavit, which remains sealed to this day, Susan testified in meticulous detail of her witnessing of secret homosexual sex parties at the Plaza Hotel in New York City in the 1950s between her husband and other powerful deep political actors. Through her husband,
There is a world, and there are people where they'd be going like, oh, I remember going to that guy's sex parties. That's just like, it's absolutely
Oh, the
insane,
webs that are
RJ.
weaved. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have things I saw in the news last week. A guy finally got arrested from Abercrombie and Fitch for using the young models who wanted to star in their catalogs as sex objects, you know. And so finally that's out. Well, the guy's 80 now, you know, and he's sorry. He pleaded guilty. He doesn't have to go to prison. Real quickly, well, let's do it. Let's go through the history of these things. People can be, you know, disenfranchised, but if you vote, everything's okay. You've done all you could. You voted. Voting has been around a lot, you know. Eligibility is a big deal. Who gets to vote? Now cannot be abridged on account of race, color, previous condition of servitude. That means if you're a free slave, you can vote, or if you were, you should have. Sex or age, 18 and older. Constitution, as originally written, did not establish anything for darn near 100 years. So it's confused. But it wasn't until 1964 to where our nation could basically say, we have one man, one vote. Not really. It's an electoral system. So your vote really, you know, you can make an argument every vote counts, but not really, because there's the very confusing electoral system that there, you know, so that the winner take all just doesn't happen, you know, because that has been decided as that's not good either, right, RJ?
Well, I think initially it was a better system when, you know, the state legislatures voted on who was going to go to Washington to represent that state, where now it's all just popular. Yeah, when they changed that back about the same time the money cartel was organized. Yeah, it's in the, it's not recent past, but it hasn't always been the way we've, been accustomed to it. It used to be different. Yeah. And it was
It was,
probably better. There's a reason why, and how it got changed.
well,
Yeah.
so
Otherwise it'd be,
how many people are you encouraging that the suffrage, the right to vote that worked in the 1600s, we should go back to where only people that have been granted the right to buy land by the king or given the land and thus could be considered property owners, they were the only ones that could vote at that time.
that was just a way of, skin in the game thing. That was before the IRS, where now your potential can be taxed rather than, real items. It's more of a different concept with your labor. See, again, it hasn't always been the way, everybody living now is only can relate to after the changes, today
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah, we live after the changes. Yeah. Well, after the changes.
Yeah. So and then it's just accepted that, and
How,
it's not
and
for
so
the
I was having
betterment.
to process this sentence last night, and I'd never even heard of some of these people. Under the Duke's Law, that's not, that's in colonial New York, suffrage did not require a religious test, but was restricted to landholders. In Virginia, all white freemen were allowed to vote until suffrage was restricted temporarily, and then even white freemen couldn't vote. But it was restricted to householders for a year and a half or something. One household, one vote. Then freeholders from 1670 for 6 more years, and then following the death of somebody I never heard of in 1676, so that freeholders permanently only freeholders could vote. Quakers were not permitted to vote in the Plymouth colony or the Massachusetts Bay colony, and along with Baptists were not permitted to vote in several other colonies, as well as Catholics. You can't vote. They were disenfranchised following the Glorious Revolution 12 years later. So we could, but, and here I am today, basically saying, where did these guys even come from? And I think as soon as toleration is what they wanted, and as soon as you start, or if there was anybody that ever had an intent of founding a Christian country and treating others, that was thrown out the window. And they said, come on over here and bring your false God worship, and you can set up here.
It's integrating with toleration.
And then deciding,
it's a blend of, the agenda of because, a strength in numbers, as far as manipulating the vote and process, and they've been doing that a long time. I feel it's easier to contaminate when you have more there to contain. The solution to pollution is dilution, and when it comes to manipulating, you need more votes so you can fudge the votes, and it's less obvious in my mind.
These children had one drop of black blood, so they lived their lives as slaves.
Could have been,
yeah. Children who looked like this, if you had one drop of black blood, you're a slave for life.
Yeah, provable, and there's your papers, and Yeah, it's all capitalized. You're part of the corporation. Yeah, we have control.
And and
Sure.
depending on what's happening at that time, you can't vote or you can vote. Our 19th Amendment, all of the worldwide movement towards something new, something brand new. For however long the Bible and history has been going on, there's been ways to run, and people have had children, and here goes the world. But now there was a worldwide movement to let white women vote.
Ebbs and flows. The prohibition. There's a lot of those are busy times also,
Woo-hoo.
and it
That's
just
right.
it
They did fight
escalated
temperance and
the
they
underground.
tried abolition, temperance, and suffrage together. Those three were their trinity of we've been wronged. If we could only get to vote, we're going to vote for what's good, and there'll never be mob rule again. Good
Okay.
thing that worked out. So these women and others, RJ, this is my opinion. What they would do is they'd say, hey, you are so cute. This guy, see that guy over there? He's 85 years old. We think he's going to die in 2 or 3 years. We have a plan to elect him president. We want you to seduce him, marry him, and then if you have to run the presidency. Now that's happened 2 or 3 times. Now it's happened 100 times that somebody pointed hot young girls to rich men who died in a few years, left them a fortune, and then they decided to stay widows and had girlfriends and spent their millions on every liberal cause in the world. That's documented, RJ. That's not just somebody claiming to want to reform the church talking. That's true.
Sure. Yeah.
Anybody want to argue with RJ about that? He's right there. You heard what he said. He's ready to say. Women's suffrage in the United States. It's a worldwide movement. Fill in the blank on these sheets, we want votes. Blacks can vote later, but for right now, let us vote. It's the most important thing in the world that we can vote for the president. If we can't vote for the president, it means that we shouldn't have sex with our husbands because they actually hate us. And now we can have militant feminists who thinks that any type of intercourse between men and women is rape because men have been in power for too long, damn it.
I thought you were going to do some sort of Esther commentary there.
If I had one, I'd whip it out there. This girl was rich, and she bumped into a girl in England, and 2 years later, she bumped into him again, and she decided, they're like, we should go to Seneca Falls, New York, and start a Seneca Falls convention in 1948. Seneca Falls, New York, of course, used to be called Central Park, and there was a town that was ran by black people there, but they didn't last because they all got kicked out and killed, and then these people moved in, and they're rich. They owned the land then, and then they started a feminist movement there. Yeah, this was the girl that she met in England and then started the moving spirit of the occasion. Yeah, Lucretia Mott. Frederick Douglas, he went there to the Seneca Falls thing and said, you should tie in abolition and suffrage. So they did, and he did, but they parted ways, and eventually some black men got the vote, so he was happy, and the women got the vote later in the 19. So there was a little split there for a while. They thought they could have each helped each other more, but here they are, the rich people who funded young women. They changed the world, and now abortion's legal, and they think that's the greatest thing in the world, RJ. They love it. But in reality, it just a little more history on.
They'd signed 38 of them with different countries between 1919 and 1933. And it was by no means a special alliance or sign of special favor, as critics have charged. In the Concordat, Hitler promised not to persecute the church and allowed its organizations to continue. But in exchange, the church...
So I'm positing Adolf Hitler as a type of Saddam Hussein or any other dictator that formerly worked with and for the United States. Adolf Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford on his desk. He learned eugenics from the United States. He modeled their restructuring on fiat money that was based on what they learned in 1913 at the Jekyll Island. So he was, this is about the Catholics. They had 38 countries set up. There was a world war where everyone believed that their country, if it turned out on top, it was Darwin's choice, survival of the fittest. When they found out it was going to be Japan, they faked atomic weapons. The mafia of the world said, whoa, boys, let's settle it back down till we can get some more white power in this. And that's where we are. So they got men and women hooked on drugs and video games. And the takeaway, it's the Catholics. It's never was like, oh my gosh, we've got to hate the swastika and the Germans. That's not it, RJ. You got anything?
Yeah, and the military-industrial complex continues. Yeah, I mean, it was.
There you go. They make a lot of money off that. That's how they make their living, right?
Well, the taxation and the fiat money.
Right, and then these guys, the same ones that put Hitler out there, put the P. Diddy out there, and we know what they do. RJ, you ever ordered $1,000 bottle of champagne?
I have not.
Well, I guess some people do it 4 or 5 times a night when they go out to party and try to impress their gay friends and their liberal friends so that they can go to have adrenochrome parties and stuff. They buy $1,000 champagne like it's nothing. A bottle.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You sure? Yeah.
Church would not become involved in
love.
And they shake it up and let it spill.
Naturally, Hitler broke his promises immediately, banning Catholic youth groups, putting vocal clergy on trial, and cutting off funding to Catholic private schools.
Oh, so this seems like it's a rewrite. The people picked on him. Yep. So let's see, back channels. He was finalizing plans for the invasion. Hitler was also engaged with negotiations with Pope Pius XII, so delicate that not even the German ambassador to the Holy See, and I think that was the next pope, but they ended up letting them go. So let's see what this one says.
A series of recently opened Vatican archives are shedding new light on the relationship between Pope Pius XII and Adolf Hitler as he led Nazi Germany during World War II. Amna Nawaz looks at what we are learning and how it changes our thinking about the Vatican during that time.
Judy, in 2020, the Vatican released millions of documents on Pope Pius XII that were previously hidden from public view. These include transcripts of negotiations between the Pope and Nazis. A new book published today takes a deeper look at these revelations. Historian David...
You think that they released everything they know? Let's just give this one more minute.
The author of that book...
They just released what they don't mind you knowing.
Yeah.
If it's like, even true. Yeah,
I thought, wow, I'll be old, but I'll still be alive when they're forced to release every bit of information about the JFK assassination. And then they didn't do it. And they said, no, we're going to wait 6 more years. And then I got older and I waited 6 more years. And then they still didn't do it, RJ. They still don't do it.
It's kind of like what, used to be just a frivolous conversation with, between you talked about the weather, and now with weather,
Oh my
cloud
goodness.
seeding, manipulating, being so suspicious, it's going to take on probably a different tone once people really I'm thinking you probably clicked on what the current weather where it's 80 degrees in central Wisconsin and Michigan, just a couple days before November. Extremely unusual weather patterns. Today, now this week, and
everywhere under the dome.
and then the rain that's probably going to follow for a third of a month straight, 10 days of just us.
Right.
Yeah.
Flood everything and then boom, down to 20 and make it an ice skating pond.
I mean, things have been manipulated in more than
But we're not manipulated.
influence.
What do you see on that book cover? Look at that book cover. And I hope people have been kind of looking. Look at, we got cars, motorcycles, and horses with people dressed like medieval guards. And they basically, is it a modern city? Well, now there is a narrow road of people that say, no, that's just the same city that people like King David and those guys lived in. There's always been these big fancy cities around. And
being versatile with travel. You can still walk, you can ride a horse, you can ride a motorcycle or a moped.
They go, but if the muddy roads and the
truck.
horses pooped in the streets, it's like, well, you know what? Every time I've been to a parade or something, when there's horses in the street, they're never surprised that it's not like, oh, there's nobody with a shovel to pick up the poop. People that own horses are used to that.
History of Pius XII, Mussolini, and Hitler. And he joins me now. David CER, welcome to the NewsHour. Thank you for being here. So a lot of folks know previous versions of history around Pius XII went one of two ways, right? He was either called Hitler's Pope and an anti-Semite, or the story was that he did everything in his power to save as many Jewish people as he could during the war. After reviewing the documents, what's your understanding?
Well, I think neither one is really accurate.
Right. You know what is accurate? It's all a setup to get you arguing about to accept the fact that Christianity would accept as one of its denominations a obvious cult who worships ISIS and openly declares they have hundreds of years of history of flaying people alive, killing them if they don't agree with their doctrines on the Trinity, which most people didn't. Were going like, wait a minute, what? Are you kidding me? And these are the same people that did the Red Cross in the Vatican. Is that it? Going like full blown. No, they weren't full. This is their double talk. Yeah, they did it. It was.
Well, wasn't that kind of the the founder, wasn't that a woman that with the vision of the Red Cross, wasn't that a woman
In Revelation 13? Oh yeah. Well, I'm not trying to blame the women. I'm just trying to say they're not off the hook.
Yeah, and you can have a good idea or whatever vision. That doesn't mean it can't be contaminated by someone else along the line, but maybe it was the motive to begin with as far as an outcome.
There is only one way that white people and white power could be a thing when we're only a small percentage of the world population, and that is we were the Freemasons. We were the ones that had the plan that were, you talk about inside information. Some people had it and some people didn't. And if you're just a normal person in a normal country, let's say it's Nigeria, and all of a sudden somebody shows up in what they used to be called Bimin, and they have gold masks and everything's good. They have royalty dressed as well as your royalty, and they say, let's do some business. And they do, and they make some friends, and then they find some other dirty dogs that were working for that kingdom, and they say, you want to try some heroin? And then they get them hooked on heroin. They say, you want to be with us? Yeah, okay. Well, let's take this shit over and start selling the people that live here. And the people said, okay, let's do that. And our history shows that the white power got them to do it. And then they went to Jamaica, did the same thing. Haiti did the same thing. And in reality, we could look at it as maybe it was those Illuminati skull and bones bad guys that had a plan that went over with, hey, buddy, hey, pal, what's up? We're all, we're in it together, this, that, the other thing. And then they'd give them smallpox with infected blankets. Or, then they'd just take them over and say, guess what? This is a gun. Look, boom, we're going to kill you. Hey, they admit, the United Fruit Companies and others, when they went to colonies, they would gather the people. They admit this into a crowd, pull a man out, cut his hand off in front of everybody and say, we're going to be expecting quotas. And if you don't meet your quota, we're going to cut your hand off like this man that we're sorry. You're now a foreman in charge of making sure that these people don't get their hands cut off. And we're so sorry you get to live in your own cabin and here's a wife. And eventually it's like a eunuch that gets his nuts cut off. Well, in a week, he's going to not have any nuts, but he's hungry. And that king's going to say, do you want a job? And the guy's going to go like, what's in it for me? You get to be a boss because all of a sudden you're going to be more focused on me and taking care of me. And although you have no nuts, pretty much you can do anything else you want. That's our history. That's what happened until like 50, 60 years ago when women started
it's not a new concept.
We get to abort our babies. We get to abort our babies finally.
Yeah, that's not a new concept by any means.
And then people like drop a video like, did you know
Right,
that all worship is kind of like abortion? Well, no shit. Tie in abortion to racism, RJ.
No, you tell me.
Do it gently. Man. Is abortion racist, RJ?
Well, there may be, some, whether it's based on, income, poverty, whatever, that are more susceptible to taking that decision route and going through with an abortion. And then it's and it's what stage is the development of the fetus at the time of the abortion that may or may not be more acceptable. They prefer them to be either just before birth or right shortly after birth. You're given a
right, and they do have the
harvesting.
They have the abortion pill, day after pill,
but morning after.
Now that those are legal, I think they had to revert to that, or they were allowed to revert to that goal that they had set, because it was a plan to open up when it was, you had to show up and get a physical abortion. Most of those clinics were set up in populations that were minorities because they don't like white trash But
and
RJ,
poverty
their
driven.
rate. What am I trying to say?
Well, one way to control if you limit the amount of births, it won't grow as they did that in Egypt, at least with the male slave workforce, controlling it partially, but it still is an effective way, without any males. As far as I don't know how you're going to repopulate without one or the other. You need both genders in order to be successful at procreating. And
Well, they would argue with you about that at my school.
well, sure, because you can always adopt.
Right. Or you could ask somebody
Well,
to
how
be a
did that
surrogate.
happen?
No, the Seventh-day Adventist, they have their own Adventist hospital chain established in 1945, and as long as abortion has been legal, the Adventist hospital system has allowed abortions. So that's a true statement.
So
They
if
love
there's
it.
a
They love to make money from
civil
abortion.
legality, then everything's copacetic, because that's all you really need to worry about. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we had the rat lines,
Okay.
and now I'm not going to get into anybody's personal history, but the history of masturbation and I showed that, you looked that up, and it was like all of a sudden they were going to the Renaissance and the history of sex toys, Voltaire and Rousseau, the two big names, besides David Hume or who are some of the other, John Locke, the actual philosophers of that time. But they were against it. It was for it. It's just our timeline bringing it back to the Renaissance. But philosophers attribute it to mental diseases, dietary restrictions. That's what the Kellogg's and the Seventh-day Adventists brought to the party. But let's see. What else did I search on this? Swooning. Okay, let's look up hysteria. Thank you, Father. This isn't one of the bright spots for the women feminist movement. But hysteria, I'm not going to mention. People could talk about menstruation or ovulation and emotions and hormones, but I won't. I'll just leave it at that. Hysteria.
Just leave it to the moon phases. Yeah.
You rabble rouser, you you lunatic enforcer. Hysteria is a term to use to mean ungovernable. That's what they used to think. That's what the women were going like, yeah, that's what I got. Ungovernable emotional excess, and can refer to a temporary state of mind or emotion. In the 1800s, female hysteria, as opposed to hysteria, because you always hear about men acting hysterical.
No wonder they had all them asylums.
We have to talk, I wanted to talk about female hysteria. Here's women under hysteria. It looks like one of them is under a blanket. There's a woman, a ballastment, yawning. That's an hysterical yawn, I guess. Whoa, what in the hell? What?
Now you're going animated, huh?
All I'm saying is that if people knew what was going on, some would be shocked, and some women would say, sign me up. I'm in. Let's do it.
Let me have it. Yeah.
Sleep hysteria. Okay. I know that that's me. When I sleep, I want to be into it. I'm all about sleeping when I'm sleeping. Okay, here's these guys who, whatever happened to this on this table, she has yet to recover. But this is every famous person that became a doctor in France. Even the guy that did Pavlov dog, I think, is in here and stuff. Going like, whoo, did you see what just happened there? And now Baron
Yeah, that
Trump,
was a close
Baron
one.
Trump,
Oh, it
Baron
happened
Trump wants
nearby.
this. Baron Trump, did you hear that about earlier? He's 18 years old. They suspect he has a lover and he's living in Las Vegas like we're a married couple. Well, you know what married couples do. Basically, it was once common medical diagnosis. I guess that's pseudoscience, but it was mainstream. It was described as exhibiting a wide variety of symptoms, including anxiety and all of this stuff. I don't want to sensationalize it or glorify it or anything else. What I'm trying to say is that while they were doing their inquisition, they found a group of girls who thought, I'm in. This is cool. A very small percentage, like what used to be that there was a very small percentage of same-sex attracted people, like less than 2%, or something like very small, but now it's big. Who, and we don't know. We're not doctors. We're just trying to say that the Bible has one way and the world has another way.
And in our lifetime, we have witnessed some societal changes or behaviors and choices, and there could be something behind, driving these said changes, possibly.
Right. And if we didn't come to a society to where, looking at the past, how did they become comfortable with slavery to where an average woman could go, I'm cool with watching this black man drink from a fountain marked blacks, and I'll drink over here. Everybody did it. Now we live in abortion society to where when you're grocery shopping, you're not trained to think like, wow, about half these girls have had abortions statistically. Because that's not what we talk about. We never talk about it.
Yeah, and then there's a percentage of those that had more than one procedure.
It had to be working towards this, to where now it used to be when in our Leave It to Beaver world, when we could watch things like Hogan's Heroes and the Beverly Hillbillies, and it was new, not reruns. We never dreamed at a point where 18-year-olds like Barron and those people like that, or like my nephew when they were that age, they're going out there and they're doing those things. There's a constant supply of 18-year-old porn stars showing up ready to have anal sex or groups. We live in a saturated sex world, but nobody talks about it. Nobody ever, because, and then they did pump in the 50 Shades of Grey thing about 10, 11 years ago, just to let people know, yeah, you're constantly going to be fighting it. Okay, look, there's a sin unto death, and I think masturbation is probably it, that we are all going to have to deal with it and realize that there's a narrow road of people that the Bible says we can make it. We can do this. We can live away from the world that is about to be judged for accepting their normalized education. And when we teach that the normal schools that were built from the 1880s to the 1920s that all say normal school, and they're in Beijing, Pakistan, Tibet, Germany, South America, like the mud flood buildings, all of our education has been geared to be normalized. And if you believe it, You're on the wide road to hell. RJ, bail me out. Por favor.
Totally normal.
Everybody loves that.
Totally
Look,
normal.
it's a globe. Okay, I'm getting sleepy.
Spinning, wobbling, twisting, being
My
hurled in
eyelids
an
are so
ever-expanding
heavy.
vacuum.
Don't say vacuum, RJ, because we don't know how to get the vacuum figured out.
It totally sucks. It totally sucks.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's how I curb Dogma in a post-Armageddon to former sex addicts that are now on a narrow road, willing to suffer for Christ Jesus and never let go of that plow because they know their spirit confirms it. This is a flat earth nation with the golden age past because the mud flood was Armageddon. After that 1,000 years, there was a reaping. The rest of us, the rest of the dead, who were dead in our sins and had a chance to be born again. We were the rest of the dead made alive. Now understand. And we're going to keep having your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame.